Actually, I think maybe probably pause on that. I maybe we can go to the second half now. I just want to ask you those last things because I think it's relevant to what we're going to talk about next, and that is kind of like the game dev side of it. The what has indie games done for like making games in general? Because to me, I felt like making indie games when they started to become really popular for the general really helped people want to do game dev, right?
Yeah,
Like my first actual published game was a Flappy Bird clone. And
I remember playing it.
it's like it wasn't much. I wasn't going out to change the meta of how Flappy Bird goes. Everybody was kind of doing it, but it was my first successfully completed game that I was able to put out on the market that people got to play, that I got feedback on. And it was amazing for someone who's hasn't really developed a game to finally actually publish one. It's such a great feeling. And I think that feeling kind of spread out more and more to where now people are kind of doing the same thing. And I think that's where those really simplistic kind of styles come from. Um, I think if it wasn't for indie games, I'm not sure how many people will see it possible to make games. I know everybody has the grand of like, oh, if I just had everything in the world, I can make this grandiose game that everybody will play and buy. That kind of
Yeah,
that's still around, but I think when people are now like looking at Unity and looking and at using Unreal and how accessible these two game engines are, you can download it and try something out, and there's active tools to really help you kind of kick off your prototype, see if your thought actually works out with yourself or with friends. I think that kind of having some outlet where that can go to, I think really kind of skyrocket game development as a whole, and had people not wait for big AAA companies to kind of make the game that they want for them. They kind of
yeah,
saw an active thing. Now, game development is hard no matter what you do. Trying to make a game at all is very hard, and trying to finish it even as a skeleton version of it is just not it's not the best easy. It really is. I think game development is one of the most disciplined things that you can ever do because it's really, can you keep all that motivation, that enthusiasm all the way out through the process, because you're not going to
yeah.
finish it in a month. It's just, unless you're starting really small, tic-tac-toe-ish kind of thing, you're not going to finish it in a month. So can you keep doing it?
On that note, another thing is like, is your game still going to be relevant by the time it comes out? Because unlike movies and music and stuff like that entertains people, those are done in like less than 6 months. Most of the filming and stuff like that, then editing, and by the end of the year they're already out. Or you know what I mean, or that by next year they're already out, so they're relevant. And sometimes games can take up to 4 to 6 years, sometimes 7 years. You know what I mean? Even for just indie developers, because it's hard. It's hard to do and stuff like that. And there's times where people come out with games and might have been one of the biggest trends at the time, but 4 years later, when they already got their game out, it's not really a thing anymore. So it becomes more of a niche, and then it just doesn't make it out there, which is really sad. Um, the one thing I do actually believe indie development has done for games in general is it's the space where game developers are trying something new for gaming, and it's either a hit or miss thing. Because when it comes to AAA aspects, a lot of it's kind of like cookie cutter. This will make us a lot of money, then let's make a sequel of it, and then let's iterate on that sequel, and then another company will copy that exact same thing, just change their version of it and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to indies, like they're all over the place. Like Stray is a perfect example. Hey, you're gonna play as a actual cat in this world and stuff like that, and we're gonna tell you a story. And that way, as a cat, you're not really fighting. You're not a ninja cat. You're not. You know what I mean? Things like that. You're not the cat with Assassin's Creed hood on, jumping on the top, coming down.
Yeah.
You're just a cat.
I think and I think you actually brought up a really good point too. I think talking about reskinning when a big game comes out and it blows up, and then you see the Russian market of games similar to it, just different skin or whatever, but it's the same game, right? It's well, all intents purposes, like they might add maybe something else to it, and of course they can't really have it look exactly the same, but I think Fall Guys right now has some pretty viable clones to it. I think are really good. But I know like when Unity was kind of coming out and the asset store for Unity, being able to get the thing that most programmers just couldn't do was art and kind of getting assets and stuff for the game to try out. When people just, oh, let me just take this asset of this base skeleton game, change the colors and put it out. And there you go. I made a game. You know, some of that's kind of hard. I won't like cheap it out.
Yeah.
Taking somebody else's work and trying to figure out how it actually works is a skill in and of itself. But it does kind of come up with those games that are kind of like just, you know, a copy of it, or they did it because the fad right now is that type of game and everybody wants to play, but not everybody can play it at the moment. So an alternative comes around to save the day or something like that.